Good evening, Mr. President. My question is, we are at the Kempinski Hotel. A few meters from here, there's a hole that has been described variously as the world's most expensive hole. My question is, when or if you become president, will you cover that hole, complete the hole, or convert the hole? That's my question to you. And just across the street from that hole is the Office of Special Prosecutor. What's your plan with the OSP? Thank you so much.
I am a Christian and I belong to the Assemblies of God Church. Ordinarily, building a house of God is something that we all do. I contributed monies in my local Assemblies of God branch to build our church. And it's created an environment for us to praise and worship our God. But I don't condone stealing in the name of God. And that is what has happened in the case of this National Cathedral. It is instructive that members of the Board of Trustees, some of the members of the Board of Trustees have resigned, and they have called for a forensic audit of the National Cathedral. I'm not saying it. Members on the board believe that fraud has been perpetrated against the people of Ghana, and they are calling for a forensic audit. At the time this National Cathedral came up, it was somebody's personal commitment to God. And we are sure that public funds were not going to be used for the National Cathedral. Unfortunately, we hear that 300 and something million has gone into it. Where did those payments go? Were they justified? Who did they go to? These are all things that we have to unravel. And I think that that is the first thing we do before we even decide what to do with that huge pit. And so first, let's investigate and do a forensic audit. And if people have, illegally and unlawfully taking the monies of the people of Ghana, they must be made to refund those monies. And so that's the first thing I'll do with regards to the cathedral.
It's refreshing to hear about what could be done about corruption. And Mr. President, when you were voted out, I encountered many civil society leaders who said the corruption was endemic, and extending the time of the NDC would mean the corruption will get worse. I hear the same civil society leaders repeat the same thing, that at least one benefit we can get as a country is not to keep a government in for 8 years, because the corruption will get bad. I don't believe that we must get to elections before we can get what we deserve. I believe citizens' power ought to be exercised without the kind of repression we see with the police today, so that a young man, a PhD, Oliver Barker-Vormawor, is facing prosecution, staging a coup on Facebook. That ridiculous thing. I don't know if you will instruct your Attorney General to file a nolle prosequi to stop that nonsense. Now, you kept repeating reset, reset, reset. I believe it must be a very important word to you. In Kenya today, there is a reset, and the citizens are forcing it. 47 corporations, SOEs, are being dissolved. 50% of the president's advisors are losing their jobs. My question to you is, 8 people were killed in elections in 2020. We are 4 years down the line. Those lives must matter. Over 200 people in Ashaiman were brutalized by the army, and I wrote about it as state-sponsored terrorism against them. 180 of them were arrested by the military, manhandled and released without anything. As we speak, nothing has happened. What have you done as the opposition leader about these things?
Thank you.
What will you do about these situations?
Thank you very much.
The first was about the prosecution of the laptop coup in regards to our colleague Bakavomao. And I do think that I don't want to be in contempt of law, but I can say on authority that I don't think that that prosecution was necessary. And so let me just keep it like that, so that I don't get cited for contempt. I think that prosecution was unnecessary, and it was an overreaction by the government. With regards to what is happening in Kenya, I don't think that we have to wait for the backlash of what the youth did in Kenya for us to do the things that we have to do. And that's why I started talking. I said, look, the time has come for us to act, and that it can't be business as usual. The Kenyan youth have sent a signal to the whole of Africa that they will push back if the leaders don't do the right thing. And so definitely I'm signaling that it will not be business as usual in our new administration. We'll cut out waste, we'll cut out opulence, we'll bring a code of conduct for public sector, public appointees, especially political appointees, in how they behave, in terms of their modesty, in terms of their humility. Your appointment to that office is an opportunity to serve. It's not an opportunity to lord it over the people. And so our political appointees and public office holders must change their attitudes. And so that is what we're going to insist on, that people that we appoint are modest people, they are humble, they will open up to the people, and they'll do the things that will make the lives of our young people better. And so we're going to hold them to a higher criteria of service than people have been held to in the past. And that's why I say, if you agree to serve, you must serve, and not have other side businesses and do other things. You must not go and buy state property. Anybody serving in my government will not be allowed to buy a state asset. Nobody serving in my government will buy a state asset. Vehicles or cars or buildings or land or anything, nobody serving in our government will be allowed to buy a state asset. With regards to the deaths, I have the same opinion as you. 8 of our citizens died for no reason, and our president has not even extended any recognition of what had happened. And no attempt has been made to investigate. I have said in several places that we'll investigate what happened and find out those culpable for those deaths. And aside from that, we'll compensate the families adequately on the loss of their loved ones. And it's not only the deaths during the election. You mentioned there are shaman brutalities. It shouldn't have happened. I mean, a soldier was killed, very unfortunate, by a group of armed robbers. And because of that, a whole community was subject to brutalization. I don't think things like that, should happen in the 21st century. And so I put out a statement when it happened, condoling with the victims, and also asking the military to exercise patience. I believe that the military work in a very difficult environment. They are responsible for our safety and security. But at the same time, they should recognize that the money the taxpayers pay that put them in that uniform and give them those instruments are to protect the citizens and are not supposed to be used to brutalize the citizens. And so we need to see how we deal with that. Ayawaso West Wogon, a whole commission of inquiry was set up. Government has with impunity refused to implement the recommendations of the committee. Only recently I visited one of them. He was a footballer. He is unable to go back to work or do anything because of the infirmity in his leg. And so I went and presented a freezer, a flat screen TV, and 5,000 cedis to him in order to help him keep going. And I believe that people like that should be adequately compensated so that they can live their lives again.
Benadavile.
Thank you very much, Sami. Thank you, Mr. President. I think there are two pending questions that were forgotten, the sports question and then the Umaru Sanda question on OSP. So my question is, you said that you can work with 60 ministers, which is interesting. The number of DCs has increased from 110 to 261. And it appears when districts are created, the EC also increases the constituency. So now we have 275. Those are also arms of government that are expensive. Now, while this is happening, the AMA had 9 districts created out of it in 2018 to 2019. So we are increasing districts. We are creating new districts even in AMA, but AMA has only 3 sub-metros. So the ability to raise revenue is also lower. So it's a 2-in-1 question. Are we going to stop at 261 districts, 275 constituencies, cutting cost? And within that same question, the issue of AMA becoming only 3 sub-metros, they can't raise enough revenue. So it's difficult to manage the city. You've spoken about building a new capital. Does that mean Accra is a lost cause?
Thank you very much.
Increasing districts, that is part of the expenditure government has to bear. Bernard, unfortunately, it is provided for in the Constitution. And unfortunately, it has been misused by governments. A lot of the time, the motivation for splitting districts is to create additional constituencies. And so you find that districts have been split and become unviable because they are too small and do not have economic opportunity to be able to be viable as a district. There are many districts today whose only source of income is District Assembly's Common Fund. And so unfortunately, that is what has happened. I remember when I was a deputy minister, the districts were under 100, about 90 districts or 70 districts or something like that. Today we have 261. And there's no scientific basis for the division except gerrymandering. Because there are districts that are bigger that should have been divided, that are not divided. But districts that are smaller that should have been left as they are have been split and created into smaller districts. Because then the party that wins in that district can have 2 constituencies instead of 1. So that is the case. Several districts that existed, constituencies that existed have been converted into districts. So in looking at a review of the Constitution, we must set some more stringent guidelines for the creation of districts. You know that now every traditional area wants a district. And so we're getting to the stage where every paramount chief wants his traditional area to be a district. Because I go around and traditional paramount chiefs are requesting districts for their traditional areas. That's not what it was meant to be. But if you look in the Constitution, the creation of regions is specified, and you must go through a process that requires consensus building. Unfortunately, it's not the same with districts. With regions, you must have a commission of inquiry, and the commission of inquiry must recommend, and when it has recommended, it must go for a referendum. 40% of the people in that region must vote, and 75% of them must say yes. And so, if we do the constitutional review, we probably must look at making more stringent the creation of more districts. Because if we say it's just based on population and land size, where are we going to stop? Ghana today is 33 million people. It is predicted that by 2050 or 2030 something, we will be 50 million people. And so if you say population is the driver, then by the time we are 50 million people, we will have 600 districts. And so that is a major issue, and I agree with you that we should look at that. But I think that there are more opportunities for improving funding to districts. And one of the things that has been forgotten is the issue of property rates. If we collect property rates properly, we can raise money to improve social services in the districts. And so even though AMA has been split up into other districts, I mean, just look at the houses in Accra. Just look at the properties in Accra. Bernard, you think that if these properties rates are collected properly, the districts will not have enough money to do the drains and do the roads and do everything? So one of the things we're going to do is to support the districts and enhance their capacity to collect their property rates. Because District Assembly's Common Fund was introduced, property rates are not collected the way they should. My father died and left his house. One day I got a frantic call. Brajon, come. They've come to paste a notice that they're going to sell the house. So I go there and I look at the notice. It says, what do they call it? Distress something, and that if we haven't paid, and so we're supposed to be taken to court, you know. Meanwhile, I said, but where is the property rate bill? We hadn't received property rate bill for almost 5 years. And so they had put the address there of the place where we should go. So I went there and I said, oh, you want to sell my father's house? And I don't know, we haven't received any bills. And the man said, oh, your bills, which one is that? The Tesano, He said, the bills are here. You haven't come for your bills. Oh, I should come for my property rate bill. He says, your bills are here. Look, you haven't paid. Of course, I don't want them to sell my father's house. So I collected the bills and I wrote a check for them. And that ended the story. But I'm saying that we must support the assemblies to be able to give out the bills timeously and collect the money. And we must value those properties properly. I mean, some of those properties, if you charge 5,000 cedis a year, I mean, they'll be willing to pay because the value of the house is worth millions. And so that could be a new source of funding for district assemblies. Accra is getting difficult to manage because of its size and population. And so the city is spreading beyond its limits. It makes it difficult to continue to provide social services to the city. And so I propose that we look at establishing a new city so that we can move some of the agencies out of the city in order to reduce the pressure on Accra. Can you imagine if Nigeria had not built Abuja? Today, Lagos would have been in gridlock. You will not be able to even walk in Lagos because it would have been shut down. So I said we must start thinking about creating a new city and moving some of the agencies and departments out of the city. But of course, we must connect the two cities with good transportation networks so that people can go back and forth. And aside from that, it gives us an opportunity to plan that city better and ease the gridlock in Accra. It is not an immediate project. I said I envisage that it will take about 20 years to complete, but we must start somewhere. And that's why I said we'll start the feasibility and planning in the 4 years that I'm president. Other people will come and begin to implement. And we have the opportunity because the Volta Lake and the river are there. There will be access to clean water. We can make it a smart city where the services are provided. There will be no kiosk and containers littered all over the place. We'll provide markets so that if you want to go to the market, there's a properly organized market and everything. There are supermarkets, there are schools, there are parks for recreation and all that. We can even make it a tourist center. We can create amusement parks so that families can go there and have amusement. We can have a water park. We have no water park in this country where you can go with your family and have a nice time. And so I envisage that if we start towards it, we might not live to see the end of it for some of us, but our children and our children's children will benefit.